Hello, my lovely rose garden, and welcome to Character Corner. This is a series of videos dedicated to exploring some of my own original characters and giving you more information about them and their stories. Before we get started, if you'd like to read the stories these characters come from and support a queer indie author, I have an Etsy shop linked in the description where you can buy my books in paperback or ebook from me. If Etsy isn't your thing, all of my books are available anywhere books are sold online. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, etc. But if you buy paperback from me, you do also get a bookmark and some other little goodies with your signed copy, just for your consideration. Jumping back into it, today's subject to dissect is Christopher Robinson, the protagonist of my very first published book, ALiCE. Alice and I have been on a long journey together, and whenever I start something new, I always find myself coming back to Christopher to get it going. Maybe because he's such a determined character, or maybe because I just like to move through things in a sequential order that makes sense in my brain. Anyway, ALiCE was my very first book that I ever published, and its very, very first run was printed through Lulu.com all the way back in 2012 before I took it down out of embarrassment because I really just did not know what I was doing. I was fresh out of high school and thought I could wing it, and yeah, no. The revised and better version was published in 2016 through Ingram Spark, but even that still had some errors due to my inexperience with publishing and formatting that I had improved upon, but not significantly so. Finally, the definitive I am not touching this anymore version was published for its 5th official anniversary in 2021 with page numbers and everything, and that is the final form that ALiCE will take. Of course, I do have some more things planned for it, including a collection of short stories tentatively titled White Rabbit that I am working on now. As a general overview of what this character is going through, ALiCE is a love letter to the horror tropes of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, particularly the slasher genre, with some psychological elements from Jacob's Ladder/Silent Hill heaped on for good measure. The story follows the journey of Christopher Robinson, a kind, if completely out of his depth orderly, from a children's asylum, who gets into a car crash and wakes up in Wonderland, an island town that has definitely seen better days. Upon arrival, he is immediately faced with the horrors and realizes that one of the children from the asylum somehow followed him and is missing. Rather than seek an escape route immediately, he prioritizes finding the child, who leads him further and further into the dark and twisted world of Wonderland and its inhabitants. But of course, you can learn more about ALiCE in my All About ALiCE video. This video is about Christopher. Oh, Christopher, what a pathetic little man you are. The blorbiest of blorbos, the saddest and wettest of sad wed kittens. Christopher's life has been nothing but misery, to the point where he has somewhat mentally rewritten, aka erased, most of his own past from his mind. Rather than face a problem head-on, something he has very little ability to actually do, he prefers to simply pretend the problem does not exist and continue his blithely ignorant existence. But the problem does still exist, and eventually Christopher has to face that fact, often not with dignity or grace either, especially as the circumstances he finds himself in wear down his hold on reality with one uncanny turn after another. Whenever I make a character reference page like this, I include 3 positive and 3 negative descriptors for the character's personality. The descriptors that I chose to define Christopher by in the final artwork are dedicated, determined, caring, naive, sheltered, and self-destructive, though perhaps self-sacrificing would have been more appropriate. Christopher survives on pure determination to take care of others and his devotion to his job as an orderly at Woodrow Children's Asylum, an objectively terrible place that he does his level best to make somewhat livable for the dozen or so children in his care. This usually means putting himself last, something he is only too eager to do. It isn't as though Christopher has any particularly masochistic tendencies or actively wishes harm on himself, but in Woodrow, being able to eat or sleep comfortably usually means someone else can't, and Christopher would rather be the one who can't than leave that fate to one of the children. Per his problem of choosing to ignore rather than face problems, he's come to accept a lot of things that are frankly horrifying and terrible as just the way things are, and moves on with his life not thinking too hard about stuff like children randomly going missing in the night, where that mysterious red stain he's been told to clean up came from, or the fact that he hasn't eaten in 2 days. It definitely isn't the best, but it does reassure the children that things aren't as bad as they really are, and at the end of the day, protecting their meager happiness is really the only thing Christopher can bring himself to care about. I tried to portray some of this visually through Christopher's design. None of his clothes fit correctly. His undershirt is too big for him, while his pants and vest are too small, fitting tightly around his torso and hips to show just how unhealthily thin he is, something that even other characters comment on when he meets them. The cast of ALiCE might be full of bad people, but even they can't help but look at Christopher and immediately offer him something to eat. For this reference, I played with the idea of the top button of his shirt being a different color from the others, mostly to get an additional pop of that robin's egg blue color from his eyes into his design, but also to maybe insinuate that he had to sew an extra button to the top of the collar because of just how oversized the shirt is, or how often the button comes off. His jeans are a little ratty at the bottom, his socks don't cover his ankles all the way, and I tried to make the knees look a bit worn too. As with all the other characters in ALiCE, Christopher was created to fit a slasher genre archetype, his being the final girl role. And with this role comes some, at least in my opinion, interesting plays on gender roles, especially in terms of masculine versus feminine expectations in horror. There are a lot of ways in which Christopher fits into a more feminine role, from his job taking care of children to his slight frame and lack of physical strength. Christopher also prefers things like fairy tales, and in some ways views his life as though he is the heroine of one. Things are bad, but if he keeps a positive attitude and a gentle heart, things will work out for him in the end. Unfortunately for him, he is not in a fairy tale. It is impossible to talk about Christopher without bringing up Mickey, the precocious child who may or may not be psychic because there had to be some Stephen King references in this book. Mickey is basically Christopher's son. They are only 11 years apart in age, but that does not matter. That is Christopher's son, and if you look at him funny, you will get Christopher's full rage. There's not much he can do with it, but he'll do something. As for Mickey's feelings for Christopher, those are a little harder to parse out. On one hand, Mickey does seem to love Christopher as his caretaker and exhibits some childlike qualities of wanting to spend time with him, have his attention, and so on. Yet he continues to run away, or rather disappear, whenever he and Christopher manage to reunite. He definitely knows more about Wonderland and its workings than he is willing to share, and is fairly adamant that even if he did, Christopher wouldn't be able to handle it. Given Christopher's tendency to create his own world to live in by turning a blind eye to reality, Mickey isn't really wrong. Christopher's relationships with the rest of the cast are, as far as he's concerned, irrelevant. He has no desire to stay in Wonderland and no desire to make lasting connections there. He only willingly interacts with the residents as far as fishing for information about Mickey's whereabouts. For reasons that Christopher would rather not think about, and are therefore left undetailed in the narration, he does not trust other adults, and will only put up with them for as long as needed to assist a child. I most definitely plan to expand on Christopher's relationships and the reasons why they are the way they are in White Rabbit, at least from the viewpoint of other characters and how they view their relationships with him. And with the expansion of White Rabbit comes the expansion of theme. While ALiCE is mainly about Christopher and the idea of unrelenting, unconditional love as a source of strength to power through endless suffering, at least in my mind, White Rabbit, featuring the viewpoints of characters around Christopher, is much more focused on the theme of obsession, with Christopher as the target of said obsession, and how it can twist what would be innocent desires into something crueler. And that's all I'm gonna say about Christopher for now. If you would like to know more, please click the links in my description to pick up your own copy of ALiCE, and while you're there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. It really helps an indie author like me to get the word out about my books. Thank you so much, and keep growing till next time. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or in the description below, please consider joining my Patreon. Your support means so much to me and allows me to continue making content. If you want to support my content in different ways, consider buying my books, donating on Ko-fi, subscribing to the channel, or even just giving this video a like and comment. Any and everything is appreciated so much. Keep growing till next time, Rose Garden!